Welcome back to TECHMIMIC, where you can simply view, imitate, replicate, and get on with your day. Cloud backups are becoming essential, and if you own a Synology, it's an easy way to ensure your data is backed up offsite. For this, I'm going to use Amazon S3 as this is widely used. If you want to secure your data by integrating local network storage with cloud backup, keep watching. Let's dive straight into the Synology setup, and I will explain the Amazon S3 configuration needed once we get there. Open a web browser and log in to your Synology's DSM interface. And once there, open the Package Center. We need to install the package HYPER BACKUP, so simply search for it. And select HYPER BACKUP from the list. This will allow you to backup the data on your Synology to different targets, and it comes with encryption, versioning, and scheduling, as we will see later. At the bottom there is a dependency listed with the PHP package, which will be installed automatically if need be. Study the details further if you want, and once ready, click Install to install the package. If not already installed, it will ask if you want to automatically install PHP. Click Yes. And confirm again if asked by clicking Done. The required packages will now be downloaded and installed on your Synology. Once finished, HYPER BACKUP will be marked with the word running in green text. I will close the Package Center first and then add a desktop shortcut for easy access to HYPER BACKUP later. Simply find it in the menu, right click and select Add to Desktop. Now start HYPER BACKUP, and the first time you are immediately greeted by the backup wizard, where you have to select a backup type. This tutorial is about backing up regular files and directories, and not about logical unit numbers or LUNs. So leave the selection on folders and packages and click Next. Now select the backup destination. HYPER BACKUP can integrate with Synology's own C2 storage, or it can backup data to a second Synology device, or just to a local network drive. There are many options available. When it comes to cloud, there is a list of cloud and file services, including Microsoft Azure and Google Drive. But today we are interested in Amazon S3 storage, so select this from the list and click Next. Of course, with a little customization, you can tweak this video to your specific needs if you are using another cloud service. The next step is to configure the backup destination settings by creating a backup task that we will link to the Amazon S3 bucket. Select Create Backup Task, and in S3 Server make sure Amazon S3 is selected. This video is not a complete tutorial on Amazon S3 itself, so I'm going to assume you already have an Amazon S3 bucket set up in an AWS region and assigned an Amazon S3 storage class that we are going to connect to. At this point, we need to provide an Amazon S3 access key and secret key. Once they are provided and are correct, the bucket name will automatically be populated. Let's switch to Amazon S3, log in and select Buckets. Create a bucket for where you would like the contents of the Synology backups to be stored. Then in AWS Identity and Access Management, select or create a user and make a note of the access key in the top right. Create an access key for the Synology and take a note of the secret key. In the chapter How to configure an AWS IAM User, timestamps are below. This will be shown step by step in greater detail. Provide the access key and the secret key, and when this is all correct, the list of buckets will automatically be populated. Now select the bucket where you want your Synology backups to be stored into. For the directory, type a descriptive name, because this is what you will see back in the Amazon S3 bucket later. Click Next. The contents of the Synology are now displayed, and you can be as global or as granular as you want with the selection. Specify the location that you want to backup to Amazon S3. Once happy, click Next. At this point I don't want to backup any applications, so I'm going to skip this step. Click Next. The backup settings page appears. Here we need to create the actual backup task. You can also configure this later or adjust it later from the HYPER BACKUP interface. Give the task a name and select if you want to be notified of complete or failed tasks. Also if you want the backups to be compressed or encrypted during data transfer. You can specify a backup schedule for the job and you can also schedule an integrity check. And the final option is that instead, or maybe in addition to transfer encryption, you can also specify that you want to enable client-side encryption by specifying a password, so basically an encryption key, at this point. Once everything is to your satisfaction, click Next. The next page is about the rotation settings or versioning. There are a couple of options here, but I'm planning on a daily backup, so I'm going to specify 8 versions. That's just to be safe, 7 days for the week plus 1 additional day. Your selection is visually illustrated by the timeline graphic. Study the summary, review your selection, and go back if you have to. When you are ready to proceed, click Done. Now you're given the opportunity to backup straight away, and I will click No for now, because we're going to have a further look. We are now looking at the backup job in the Hyper Backup software. This is where you would manage the backups going forward, but once the backup is scheduled and runs according to your set interval, you would only need to come back here if you need to execute a restore. Just a quick tour through the interface. You can edit the selection we made earlier by clicking Edit. The configuration on the various tabs should look familiar by now. For example, you can add directories here to the backup job, or change the schedule or versioning. The target is listed as online in green text, indicating that Amazon S3 is ready to receive your data and the connection is established. Let's create a first backup by clicking Backup Now. Wait for the preparation phase and actual backup to finish, as indicated by the pop-up messages and the success checkmark. This was an interactive or manual backup, and the next scheduled backup is also listed. This is also where to come back later to check the ongoing results of the daily backup jobs. Click the restore icon to start the restoration wizard. Leave folders and packages and just click Next. Now select the only available job and click Next again. There's the option to include the system configuration or metadata with the restore, but leave it to default, do not restore system configuration and click Next. Now the timeline appears with only one dot or bullet on the line, as there is only one backup at this point in time. Select the backup you want to restore from and browse to the files or folders you want to restore. This is also where you would go to restore later down the road if you need to. Click Next once you are done and ready for the restore. Review the summary and click Done to start the restore. If the restore was successful, you have now effectively tested your Synology to Amazon S3 backup infrastructure. Now a couple of other things that are available in Hyper Backup. The Backup Explorer opens the timeline and you can start to restore data. When you click Version List, you can see the backup jobs at a glance, including the date and the status. When hovering over a job, you can open the Backup Explorer or view the backup summary statistics. And of course the logs can be filtered or exported for auditing purposes. After the first backup in the S3 bucket, there is now an object with a descriptive directory name you have specified earlier. You can check the content, but even if you are not using any form of encryption, this structure won't be a standard file structure. It just follows the Hyper Backup format of storing files, and restoring files should be done through the Hyper Backup interface. Although I am sure that if you study this hard enough and are familiar with the storage format used, you will be able to find and restore data straight from Amazon S3 as well, but there shouldn't be any need to do so. Log into AWS and go to the Identity and Access Management page. Here you can see the single user account that we have used so far in this demo. This was already configured when I recorded this video, so let me now create a new user from scratch so that you can see the required steps. Click Create User and specify a username. As I will only use this user for the Synology backups and nothing else, I don't need the Provide User Access to the AWS Management Console checkbox, and I can click Next. You can now add the user to an existing group, for example the admin group, or set very specific permissions. For testing purposes, I will select the admin group, but please be aware that this may be overkill, because you can also just select a specific managed policy to follow the principle of least privilege. Click Next again. On the Review and Create step, we can review and optionally add tags, which are basically labels. And once done, click Create User to continue. Back on the IAM Users page, there is a green banner informing us that the user was created successfully. We now need to create the access key and the secret key. And at the top right, under access key 1, there are currently no keys listed. Click Create Access Key. From the list, select Other and click Next. Now it's time to set a description tag, and for this I will just use the word Synology and then click Create Access Key. The access key is now created. This is the readable or clear text part. The secret access key is now also generated, and as indicated on the screen, this is the only time that the secret access key can be viewed or downloaded. You can click Show to see it on the screen, but I will copy both now to save them to my password manager. Once you are ready to proceed, click Done. A final warning appears, read it carefully and click Continue. Now still in the user details page in IAM, the access key is populated at the top right, and in the access key section including the description, Synology, and the current state, which is active. From here you can always edit the description and deactivate or delete the access key later. The next step is to go back to Hyper Backup and add a backup job with the new user. With the plus icon on the left hand side, you can add multiple targets or jobs for multiple users or buckets that you can then all manage from the single Hyper Backup instance. In this example, I have added another backup strategy for the TECHMIMIC channel. By the way, if you are not aware, that's where all things macOS related have moved to keep it separate from the main TECHMIMIC channel. Make the same selection as before, folders and packages, and S3 storage. Now let me show you what happens if I purposely enter a wrong access key. It tries to authenticate and retrieve a list of Amazon S3 buckets in this account, but it will fail, and this is how you can tell if your setup and credentials are indeed working. Let me now correct it to demonstrate this. And once the correct secret key is entered, the list is populated with the buckets, and I can now continue with the backup wizard. That's it. Hope it helped, and if it did, please like the video and keep it up. Until next time, bye!